Mr. Tito Ortiz. I don't know if I have to call him Mr. now, if I have to call him Sir now, because Lord Tito Ortiz is now a bona fide politician. All he has to do is repeat after a woman who is feeding him lines. He has to just repeat what she says to swear an oath into office, and he could barely do it. If I told Tito to say my favorite color is red, I'm quite certain that he could not do it.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to the SmeshCast. It is Smesh Sunday, and we are fresh off of a year's worth of fights. So there were no fights last night. So tonight, or today, we are going to be doing our MMA award show for 2020. So welcome to the SmeshCast Awards 2020.
I think we got to have a little more energy about this.
More energy? No,
guys,
bring it up.
It's our awards show 2020. Holy fuck! This has been a crazy year. Shit's been all over the goddamn place. So the only sure thing that you have this year, like your family, your friends, food, water, those are no longer guarantees. Whether or not if you are
toilet paper is no longer guaranteed.
We don't know that an ambulance is going to be there to get you. You have to look out for yourself. But you know what is a sure thing this year? You know what's always been there? Always is the SmeshCast.
In fact, if anything, Noah, the one thing that we used to take for granted that there really isn't in 2020 is the toilet paper.
Yeah, no kidding.
Forget food and water. Toilet paper is gone. You want to wipe your ass in 2020? See ya.
You can.
The one thing you can do is you can listen to the SmeshCast while you sit there with a dirty ass. So
exactly.
Let's start off with we're going to start off on a very broad note. Speaking of this toilet paper crazy 2020, the overall, what's the story of the year?
Hold on. Before we get into it, I think we should just give a little explanation of what exactly it is we're going to be doing here, so that everybody knows ahead of time. We've come up with a number of categories for our own SmeshCast special awards, and basically, I mean that's really it. We're going to give out some awards. We're going to talk about some of our favorite fights, and you're going to join us and have a great time, and let us know, if we missed the mark, or if there's anything that we didn't mention that should have been mentioned.
Feel free to flame us in the comments below.
Yeah, and definitely flame Mitt Romney in the comments below, because that son of a bitch isn't answering my calls anymore. These awards were dedicated to him, and I see no Mitt. So
anyway,
you're gonna have to help me out with that one.
So yeah, we came up with 13 total categories. We have 13 reasons why 2020 was a crazy year. So starting off with the story of the year. Now one little caveat: we decided this is the non-Rona story of the year. What we mean by that is obviously the story of the year is coronavirus taking over all of sport, in fact, all of the world. But other than that, we have our stories of the year. So we have a bunch of things on our list here. First of all, we have Khabib's retirement. Even with Khabib's retirement, Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov, one of the pinnacles of the sport, especially in the Russian or in the Dagestani region, unfortunately passes away due to coronavirus and Khabib's subsequent retirement from the sport. Additionally, we have UFC being the only active sport in 2020 in May, which was crazy. We have all these sports around the world getting shut down, and the UFC is the only thing running. Champions undefeated in 2020. That is a huge thing. John Jones left 205 pounds. He has been there, the pinnacle of the 205-pound division, for over a decade, and moving up to heavyweight. We have a bunch of jokey ones as well. Noah, you want to take those over? I can see you're itching.
These are not jokes. These were very important stories to me that I think resonated with both myself and with the people. You see, these elites here, guys like Rowie, the cultural elite, they'll have you believe that these stories are just funny, just jokes, not like meaningless. But you and me, the working man, we know what the real story this year is. A man placed a bet, a very
Foolish.
very ill-informed bet that Paulo Costa would beat Israel Adesanya. As a result, when he lost this bet, he was forced to eat 3 cans of asparagus. That is a hero. That's worthy of a nod for performance of the year, I think, which we'll get into later. But who among you has eaten 3 cans of asparagus? Personally, I've never eaten asparagus out of a can. I'm sure it is food. Okay, moving on.
Moving on.
Our good friend of the podcast, a great friend of the podcast, actually, Mike Perry, Michael Perry, Michelson Perry, was caught on video earlier this year, engaging in some kind of a bar fight, I guess is the technical term for it. He was throwing out, a racial slur here and a fist there, and his girlfriend was yelling and trying to get him under control, and it was just a whole real mess, which led to him having to take a brief leave of absence from the UFC in order to undertake some anger management training. To me, that's a story that has it all. It's got laughs, it's got violence, it's got drama, it's got suspense. That might be the top of my list for story of the year. Otherwise, for another very important story that has very wide-reaching implications, I think, is our another good friend of the podcast, good friend of us all, good friend of the sport, Mr. Tito Ortiz. I don't know if I have to call him Mr. now, if I have to call him Sir now, because Sir Tito Ortiz, Lord Tito Ortiz, is now a bona fide politician. He is, the Huntington Beach, California, city council member. Tito Ortiz is out there making decisions, changing policy, changing lives. And I swear to Christ, there's a video of him where all he has to do is repeat after a woman who is feeding him lines. He has to just repeat what she says to swear an oath into office, and he could barely do it. If I told Tito to say, hey, say my favorite color is red, I'm quite certain that he could not do it. That's what I've learned from that. Otherwise, a very, actually what I'd say is a very real story, which is really more of an amalgamation of many stories. If we're going to take things in a slightly more serious direction for our last big story of the year, is the stories that we've been seeing many times this year about certain individuals just not wanting to fight. Robert Whittaker, Poirier, these guys, for
Rose
one
Namajunas,
reason,
John Jones,
all of them, all of our favorite stars, for one reason or another, unanimously decided this year that they were done. They did not want to fight. It was over. I want to thank Dana White for breaking that news to all of us, as difficult as that might have been for him, to, really let us know just these fighters are, frankly, they're being scumbags. They are choosing not to entertain us. They want to do anything but fight. So honestly, I'm going to actually give another nod to Dana White for another performance of the year right there, for breaking that story for us so many times this year.
So to explain to those fans who might not have picked up on Noah's not so subtle sarcasm,
laying it on a little thick there.
We're laying it on a little thick. So Dana White, whenever a fighter does not want to fight at the exact financial, for exactly X amount of money that Dana is saying, for whatever reason, if there's any sort of dispute over the fight, Dana, to put the pressure on them, just tells everyone else, tells the fans, they don't want to fight. Everyone knows that Poirier wanted to fight Tony. There's no question in any real fan's eyes that Poirier wanted Tony, and yet Dana says, he doesn't want to fight him. And this is Dana's new strategy, pinning it on the fighters when they don't want to take money, take the low amount of money that he offers them.
Hey, just to jump in with something actually just unrelated, just because he gave me an idea. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but in one word, yes or no, do you guys think that Poirier would have beat Tony, knowing what we know now?
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. Probably.
I agree.
All right. So
sadly, Tony got exposed this year.
So let's move into and then that'll be discussed later on today, actually. But let's move on to our decision. So, Adam, you haven't spoken too much yet this episode. Where does your vote lie?
As you know, unfortunately, it is linked to the sad story of Abdulmanap passing away. But I have to say, Khabib retiring is probably the biggest piece of news and most exciting for the future of the sport, and influential. That would probably win my award. To me, that was crazy. He is still very young and still has so much left in the tank and so dominant. It's crazy that he wanted to hang it up.
Noah?
No, I agree. Be hard pressed to not say the Khabib retirement was the biggest story of the year. Although I wouldn't put it too far behind or too far ahead of rather the Jones retiring from 205. That is whatever you think about Jones, whatever you think about his last few performances, that's a historic moment, the likes of which we really haven't seen since GSP retiring from his absolute killer reign over the welterweight division. John Jones held onto that division tight. John Jones was the monster under light heavyweight fighters' beds. The reason why these guys, much the same as Khabib, the reason why no one else was able to feasibly rise to the top and become a champion, because they had this one obstacle in their way that was too much to overcome. So I don't know which one. It's hard for me to say which one I'd put in front of the other, whether it's Khabib retiring or Jones retiring. They're both just so significant. I'm gonna I'd probably have to give that one a draw. If I don't know if I could pick between them. I'd just say general champs, dominant champs retiring. Yeah. My biggest news of the year. Yeah. And I also just feel wrong giving an award to Abdulmanap passing away. That feels like it's in poor taste. Well, so I'm just going to say champs retiring.
I see what you mean there. It's about the story of the year. What's the big thing that we talk about? And I do think Abdulmanap passing away and then Khabib's subsequent retirement is so influential when you talk about who was Abdulmanap in terms of when you look at Dagestan and Chechnya and all these other countries around this area that are blowing up in terms of MMA talent, Abdulmanap is very much a huge reason why. And then of course Khabib being potentially the biggest star in the sport, maybe the greatest ever to ever do it. Him retiring, I just think that is bigger than anything else. However, I do think it definitely needs to be mentioned. My second place, or maybe even a tie for first, is the UFC being the only sport active, and that whole Fight Island thing. When we saw the entire sports world was shut down, and the only conversation that ESPN was having, that all these sports channels were having and breaking into the non-sports media, was the UFC being active, was Fight Island. And I think that really raised the profile of the UFC. The UFC ended up being essentially the template for all these other leagues, all these other organizations of how to run. The NHL, the NBA making their bubbles, very much mimicking what the UFC did. Mm-hmm. The UFC kind of being the leader of sport, when you consider where we were 15, 20 years ago of not being legal anywhere, is, I think, a huge story. And one more honorable mention, I think, realistically, I think we all know this is the real story of the year, but I guess we'll talk about other things. The launch of the SmeshCast. Boys, the biggest podcast in combat sports was launched this year, and in just 4 short months, it has reached 75 subscribers. I mean, talk about breakout star of the year, if anything.
Honestly,
but yeah,
we need our own. More seriously though, very pleased. Thank you everyone for subscribing. This has been really remarkable this year. Just that anyone gives the slightest fuck about anything that our dumbasses are talking about. So thank you.
Yeah, so we'll give our thank yous at the end of the episode. This will be our last episode of 2020, so we will give our thank yous.
I thought this is just our last episode. Done now.
But it does look like our consensus number one story of the year has been Abdulmanap's unfortunate passing away, and the subsequent retirement of Khabib Nurmagomedov. And I guess if you want to lump John Jones's movement out of 205 into there as well. Moving on to our second award, we are going on another bit of a smaller award, but still influential. We have our Old Man Overperforming Award. We didn't have a very clever name for this.
Hey, I call it the Old Man Strength Award.
The old man
for
strength.
one.
I like it. The Dad Strength Award. This is the
Dad
award goes to a fighter who is old, who looks like they should have been over the hill past their prime, and yet seems to be way overperforming their age. And I mean, with one of these at least, it's maybe not their age, but at least their age in the sport. So I'm just going to go through the 5 contestants, I guess, that we have here, the 5 nominees. Andre Orlovsky, who is in his mid to late 40s and somehow still putting wins together, doesn't make sense. Another old man, Alistair Overeem, another heavyweight, way too old, somehow still putting wins together. He beat what's his name? Oh wow, I'm forgetting. The
Augusto Sakai.
Exactly. Yes, he beat Augusto Sakai.
Walt Harris. He had a
Walt Harris. Yeah, he had a great year.
He's been killing it recently.
And for a guy who's suffered some 20 knockout losses in his career, or at least 10, I mean, it doesn't make sense. Next, Jose Aldo, not necessarily an old man, but when you consider the sport, he is very much an old man. Over a decade at the top of the highest level of the sport. Moving down in weight class, everyone said, okay, you're moving down. This makes no sense. And at 135, how is he even going to make that perform? And yet he puts together wins over, maybe not a win over Marlon Vera, but a very close fight.
Or an arguable win. I gave him that win.
Arguable win over Marlon Vera. A good performance, at least in the first 2 to 3 rounds against the champion, Peter Yan. And then a very...
He performed very... Yeah, we're not going to get into this argument. He performed very well.
Yeah, I said the
entire time until he got finished.
Yeah, in the 4th and 5th round, he was being wailed on. But the first 3 rounds, a very good performance. And then a win just a couple nights ago against Marlon Chito Vera, who's a very tough guy, and he looked incredible. Next on the list, we have Frankie Edgar, also going down to 135. He had a huge win over Pedro Munoz, and he's also a guy who's been fighting forever. And last, but certainly not least, Glover Teixeira, who somehow at 43, I think 42, on a 4 or 5 fight winning streak with wins over Thiago Santos, with a win over Anthony Smith, both in 2020, who are top 205 contenders. And honestly, if it wasn't for Israel Adesanya, absolutely would be the next guy in line for a title shot. So those are our 5 contestants. Adam, let's start off with you again. Who do you give your award to?
I'm a little bit hesitant to give it to Jose Aldo, just because I think I'd prefer to give it to somebody who's actually a little bit older and has somehow sort of like revived their strength. So I think I want to give it to Glover because, I mean, if it wasn't for Izzy, I would actually say he has a pretty decent shot against Yan.
For sure.
I feel like he would approach the fight in similar ways to as he did Thiago, or just take him down and try and submit him. And even in that fight, he took a lot of damage, and it looked like, Glover wasn't going to survive that fight, but he was still able to hold on at 42 or 43, and he's on a 4 or even 5 fight winning streak at his age is incredible, and maybe he's the next light heavyweight champion. Well, I mean,
maybe not next, but is he or Yan? Actually, they already are. If Yan wins, then yes.
We'll have to wait and see. I think for me, this is just such a who's who of phenomenal, phenomenal fighters. It's hard for me not to give it to Aldo after all of the buzz about how awful he looked and the pictures of his weight cut. Yeah, after Aldo buzz, very, 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 very funny, very clever. But yeah, those pictures came out before he had gotten back into it, of just his weight cut. It looked brutal. Everyone thought that he was looking real rough. So for him to come out and perform as well as he has this late in his career, and fighting the absolute best in the world still, and standing up with them and beating them in some cases, it's really something to behold. However, you know, like Adam said, there's an old man in the sport, and then there's an old man with old man strength. And if you want to talk about old, like, look over there, it's old man strength coming in to fucking tear your house down with one arm, you gotta talk about the Reem, Alistair. Very fantastic body, Overeem. That man.
Noah, hold up. Can I just say, I don't understand how you can talk about blowing your house down or knocking your house down and not mention his name. What's Overeem's nickname? The Demolition Man, dude. He's literally the Demolition Man.
Yeah, there you go. So that was a little, we did this little thing there. But yeah, no, he's had such a phenomenal year. You know, 2 wins this year against one against Walt Harris and against Augusto Sakai. He's coming in there, you know, he's knocking guys out. He's got the power. He's fine, you know, being much more defensive and you know, very smart in the way that he's approaching these fights, but he's making them exciting. And for a man of his age, who is, you know, as weathered as he is, because he's got what Jose Aldo's weathered, but he's not as like Overeem is weathered and he's old. You would not think that this is the man who's been knocked out 14 times. Like he's an absolute specimen. Like one of the most impressive fighters on the lineup right now. I honest to God want to see if there's him and Wonderboy are my two dream champions by the end of 2021. If Overeem can take a heavyweight belt and then retire, just get that one last run and, you know, succeed, he might have one of the greatest stories in MMA history, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess I'm going to be the tiebreaker here between you two. I do definitely see Jose Aldo up there. I definitely see Overeem up there, but I gotta say, I gotta give it to Glover, especially when you're talking about the old man strength. I mean, Glover just epitomizes what is old man strength. You look at the guy, he doesn't look like a jacked man. He looks like he's strong, but he doesn't look like he's a Greek god. He doesn't look like Ubereem, right? But then he grabs a hold of you. And you know, Thiago Santos is as strong as they come. And he just manhandles him. And at 40-something years old, and to do that against the 2 top contenders in Anthony Smith and Glover and Thiago Santos back to back, it's just amazing. I got to give it to Glover. But definitely honorable mentions to Jose and to Overeem. And I definitely say those are the top 3. But it looks like our decision will rest with Mr. Teixeira.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Teixeira
okay,
had a
let's move on.
Year.
Yeah. Let's move back on to another similar but not quite the same award. So this is our comeback fighter of the year. So this is not necessarily an old guy who's coming back and overperforming, but someone in general who in 2019 might not have had the best of year, maybe wasn't that active in 2019, who came out in 2020 and stamped their name and came back. So when we look at who we have on our list, we've got Sean O'Malley. Did not fight since 2018, I believe. Had 3 fights in 2020 rather. Did not fight in 2019. And he had 2 first-round knockouts, beautiful, over Jose Quinones and over Eddie Wineland. And then, of course, that very disappointing loss after that injury in that Marlon Vera fight. Second, we have Jose Aldo. Once again, this is the guy who, again, in 2019 didn't have a bad year, but he had a couple losses, you know. And it came back and really is a very clear top 5, top 7 guy now in 135, a division no one thought he could even make weight for, let alone compete at a high level in. We have 2 more fighters. We have Conor McGregor, who did not fight in 2019, said, I am making 2020 my season. And honestly, it's a little disappointing that he only had that 1 fight. However, that 1 fight was massive, and he did at least book another massive fight against Dustin Poirier that is coming up in just 3 or 4 weeks. And finally, we have Cody No Love Garbrandt, who had a bunch of bad losses in 2019, got knocked out a couple times, and then came back and had that only 1 fight in 2020, but it was a brutal 1-punch knockout on Rafael Assunção. So Adam, we've gone first with you so far for the first 2 awards. Noah, let's throw it over to you for this one. Who would you give your comeback fighter of the year award to?
This one is much tougher for me than the old man strength award, because these guys, all of them, have such a strong claim here. The only one that I'd maybe say doesn't have as strong of a claim is actually no. Both McGregor and Garbrandt, they only fought once this year, correct?
Yeah, that's the thing.
So those ones are both a little tough, but those were like hugely sensational wins that really put them into brought them back into the spotlight. I mean, how that Conor Cowboy fight was.
And by the way,
humongous.
both coming off, if you consider the Floyd fight a fight, back-to-back losses.
True, fair.
So after two back-to-back losses, crazy one-punch performances. Yeah, go ahead.
I think that I'm ultimately going to have to give this one to Jose Aldo, just based on how down everyone was on him last year when he was, preparing to come back. And then if you just look at just how well, even, win or lose, how well he's performing every time, he's taken guys, he's bringing it to him. He is, starting wars out there. At this point in his career, after, a few years, on the downturn, it's really remarkable to see. So I'm giving my my comeback fighter of the year nod to Jose Aldo.
Adam?
I think I'm going to give it to Conor just because he ended the year on a win, although it was only one fight. I'm a little bit hesitant to give it to Sean or Jose just because they ended on a loss.
Jose won last weekend.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, had a loss in the year. Jose lost to Peter Yan.
Yeah.
So I think, I'm going to give it to Conor. Just in terms of, it was such a spectacle of a performance. Came back, it was 40 seconds or 50 seconds or whatever it was. And yeah.
I think, this is a really tough one for me as well. Because when you look at Sugar Sean, obviously crazy, didn't fight in 2019, comes in 2020 and stamps his name, but then he kind of lost it at the end there with that Cheeto loss. And so I'm really between, personally.
Just the way you say that, Cheeto loss. I never really brought the two together, but it does make me think of a bag of Cheetos.
Yes, that's Cody Garbrandt. I can't really give it to, just because yes, he had that one big punch, but I don't know, something about it. It didn't feel like he's really back. It kind of felt like he got lucky a little bit. It doesn't,
a little like Sean O'Malley there, are you?
I don't know. To me, it doesn't look. When I watched Cody's performance, it didn't look like, okay, now I think Cody's going to destroy this division. It's like, okay, that was interesting, but I don't know if he can still repeat that. I'm between Conor and Jose. I'm really kind of torn. I kind of want to edge it to Jose just because Conor only had that one fight, and because of how low we had Jose. Conor, in my opinion, was kind of expected to defeat Cowboy. Cowboy was not on had come off back-to-back knockout losses to Gaethje and Tony. And he said himself he didn't want to be in there. So and it was so long ago. I just don't want to give it to Conor for that reason. So I will go to Jose, especially because of that last fight. And I guess my biggest thing is when I think about this award, one of the things I think about is who is it that I am most thinking, like when I saw their last fight, I'm like, wow, blank is back. And it's Jose Aldo to me. When I saw that fight, all I can think is, oh my God, the old Jose is back. And so that's why I am going to rest my vote with Jose Aldo. Which means I believe that will be the winner for this award.
Okay, comeback fighter of the year. What a good thing it is that there's three of us and not two or four of us, and we can actually have a proper tiebreaker.
Yeah. Okay, we have another one here. Another one. It's about another one. It's a bit about shocks, right? We had who came back. Who did we not expect to come back that did? Well, now we talk about who did we not expect to win a fight that did. So we are moving on to our upset of the year. Now, upset of the year, we have three contestants here. We have Jan Blachowicz defeating Dominic Reyes for the 205-pound belt after Reyes' incredible performance against John Jones. Actually, we can, as a fourth, you can argue maybe Reyes potentially upsetting John Jones. You can kind of throw it on there as an honorable mention. It's kind of tough because he didn't actually win it, but in many fans' eyes, he did.
Personally.
Yeah, in many fans' eyes, including my own, he did. It's just that he didn't get the decision.
I'd say that the three of us are as qualified as any of these fucking judges that are in there this year. If not more qualified.
The next one we have on there is Marlon Cheeto Vera's defeat of Sugar Sean O'Malley. Now, of course, there was that obvious injury or maybe not injury, whatever you want to call it, that foot ailment that O'Malley suffered in that fight. And finally, this is one that I don't consider an upset. I don't think any of the three of us considered a real upset. However, if you're a casual fan, this was absolutely an upset. And that is when Izzy beat Costa. Now, anybody that knows what they're watching knew what was going to happen. But if you're a casual and you saw this Hulk man walking around, this skinny little guy, and you're like, okay, this Hulk is going to eat this man alive. And
you might just make a choice that ends when you eating 3 cans of asparagus.
And he couldn't touch him. And the casuals got their asparagus, and the hardcores got to watch a brilliant performance by Izzy. So, who do you guys give the upset of the year to?
How about Roey? How about we let you start this time? We'll give one of us a chance to be the tiebreaker.
All right, I got to give it to Jan. I got to give it to Jan Blachowicz. I think, first of all, the most important thing in that is how big of a fight it was. This is for the 205-pound belt. This was a massive fight. It was on a massive card as well, and the Izzy Costa card had a lot of eyes on it. Second of all, not only was it like a win, but it was a dominant win. He beat him throughout the first round. He ate up that body, and then he knocked him out in the second. And third of all, when you look at just, again, the odds and the kind of what people looked at coming in, when they saw Reyes beating John Jones potentially, it's just like, you don't expect a guy like Jan Blachowicz, this kind of guy who's been around forever, to be able to beat him. And it was just so dominant. I got to give it to Jan Blachowicz. No one expected it, not only for him to beat him, but for him to beat him that dominantly.
Adam, you want to go ahead?
Sure. I think I'm going to go with Cheeto and O'Malley, just because Sean was on that 2-win streak after that year layoff, and
back-to-back first rounds.
I've actually sorry?
And back-to-back first round finishes.
I've become quite a big fan of him over the past year or so. I've started listening to like some of his podcasts and watching some of his videos, and he's a great character. Quite frankly, I was expecting him to run straight through Cheeto, and it was an unfortunate event that took place. But that's my upset of the year.
Right on. I think I got to break the tie with Jan Reyes. I think that was like the narrative going into there was very much like this is Reyes's belt.
It's Reyes coming up party.
He earned this from John Jones, and the judges fucked him. This is just a formality so that we can have it on paper that he earns a belt. And then I think that I don't think there's a single person who wasn't absolutely shocked as soon as those body kicks started landing. I think that like that moment, I can distinctly remember when my mind shifted, as I slowly realized, oh my God, he's really hurt. He is not looking good. Like, and it wasn't like Reyes was coming in there like, fucked up already. Jan used that Polish mega strength, and he hurt that man until he could no longer move. And it was just such a breaking apart what we had believed, about the division and about how that fight was going to go. And it's really it's shaken the entire division, having Jan on top.
And I just got to mention one more thing about that fight. If you do consider the Reyes beating John Jones, Reyes was undefeated. So it not only was it a big win, but it was a big win over a arguably undefeated fighter, and gave him
so was Sean.
It was a very clear first defeat. And yeah, you're right, Sean. But the difference there is that they gave him his first real loss, whereas the Sean one, you can still debate. Oh, as Sean says, he's still undefeated. But yeah, so but I definitely see the Sean Cheeto as my second place. I definitely agree with you, Adam, there.
Yeah, they're very close together, but just the stakes behind, everyone thinking that Reyes already pretty much had the title in his pocket, that really takes it home for me.
All right, so our next one's a bit of a jokey one. So this is our Mario Yamasaki, a legendary referee, He's Already Dead award. So this award goes to little bit of a unfortunate circumstances in which a fight was allowed to go on longer than it should have, and someone took too much damage, and we had to yell, "Stop! He's already dead." We only actually have 2 contestants for this one, so it should be a very clear, an easy decision as in terms of 2 votes on one person and 1 on the other, or 3-0.
Honestly, fuck it. I think they both just get the award. I think we just both give them the shout out.
Yeah, honestly, I give it to both. But our 2 contestants are, first of all, when Francisco Trinaldo knocked out Jai Herbert. This was also a crazy comeback by Francisco Trinaldo. Jai was eating him up the whole fight, and then Trinaldo just knocked him clean out. And even after Jai was unconscious, a couple more strikes were allowed to land. Dan Hardy had to yell at Herb Dean for not stopping the fight. He said that's twice already tonight. Almost got himself fired for that, but he stood by his claims. So that is our first He's Already Dead contestant. And our second one was Jason Herzog not stopping the Glover Teixeira beating of Anthony Smith. That went on 1, maybe 2.5 rounds too long. And you can also, by the way, give it not only to Jason Herzog, but also to Anthony Smith's corner.
Yeah, I can't. Like I said, this is like a draw for me. I don't know if I could pick one over the other. I mean, these were both like real, like, goddamn. How about
it's such an
fuck up of the year
award
here?
It is.
Sorry?
I said it's such an uncomfortable award to give, regardless.
Yeah, it is. And personally, I actually do give it to the Glover Anthony Smith fight. And the reason I say this is because the Jai Herbert one, it's a split second. And yes, Herb should have seen that he was out, but you can understand why there was a minute of an argument and a little bit of something where he thought he was still there, and as soon as he realized he wasn't, he stopped it. Whereas with the one with Glover and Smith, it was just prolonged. He had 7 to 10 minutes where he should have stopped it, and he didn't. And so for that reason, because of how long he had and how many opportunities he had to make the decision to stop that fight, I put it on that fight.
Yeah, I'd agree. Anytime there's teeth falling out, you gotta put a lot of weight to that.
Yeah, that was a seriously prolonged beating. Although, actually, I'm going to say, I think this is on us. I think we totally forgot. We neglected to put this in there. I would also argue, I don't know if it wins over Glover Smith for me, but Tony Gaethje, also another, like, the way that fight ended. I mean,
yeah,
I don't know if there was any point where you would have stopped the fight before, but, like, it got to a certain point where it was like, he was already dead. He was done. And I'd give that an honorable mention for that.
I agree. And I absolutely agree. It's in the spirit of the award of just this prolonged, uncomfortable beating. The only difference which is exactly as you mentioned, it wasn't very clear of when it could have been stopped earlier. It was just that Tony is too tough for his own good, as opposed to, even though Smith is too, he didn't give up. It's a little bit easier when a guy's down and taking shots than when a guy's still standing and taking shots to stop the fight.
There was no fuck up in the Tony stoppage, and the Tony lack of stoppage earlier. There was no fuck up there. Smith and Glover, you could argue, was a major fuck up.
Yeah. We're
unanimous. Nice.
Thankfully, only one more negative award. This award is an interesting one as well. This is our disappointment of the year. So this can be interpreted in a bunch of different ways. It's a pretty open award. So you can talk about a fight that didn't live up to the hype, a fighter who didn't live up to hype, an event that you thought was going to happen that didn't. So we have a bunch of things here. In terms of fights that didn't live up to hype, there's the obvious answer in Izzy Adesanya against Yoel Romero was quite a disappointment of a fight, especially given that the fight before it was on our list, and we'll talk about who wins it later, but definitely on our list for fight of the year in Joanna versus Zhang. In terms of other things, other disappointments, Masvidal only fighting once this year after that huge hype train, and of course losing. We have, of course, Tony Ferguson's complete drop off from honestly, we thought Tony Khabib was supposed to happen this year, and instead Tony took a huge beating from Gaethje and then another bad loss to Oliveira.
Tony went from a mythical figure to a man who, to just like everyone writes him off now. Like everyone says, like he would never would have beaten Khabib. He never would have beaten Poirier.
Yeah. Conor McGregor was supposed to have an amazing season, and yes, he had that amazing win to start off with a year against Cowboy, and then didn't fight again.
Yeah, where the fuck do you go?
We have the Diaz brothers. A lot of talk, no play, and finally Sean O'Malley's foot. Sean O'Malley had all that huge hype behind him after those 2 first-round finishes over Jose Quinones and Eddie Wineland, and then was looking phenomenal in the first minute or two against Chito Vera, and then of course took that leg kick, and he's been gone ever since.
You know what? I'm actually going to throw on, if we're talking, I'm not disappointed that it went this way. In fact, I'm thrilled that this is the outcome. But if you want to talk about, a fighter that didn't live up in terms of, and disappointing the fans, more broadly, I think you got to look now at Greg Hardy. You got to add him to that list because he was completely exposed as having 0 ground game. You get him on the ground, he loses because he does not know what to do against somebody who is like, much more skilled than he does. So I'm putting him as another one as a fighter that did not live up to their own hype, to their own expectations this year.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I didn't expect him to have a stellar ground game.
No, but it's not, he has nothing. He lies there and takes shots.
Yeah, I agree that his ground game was worse than you would have thought it would be. You would think it would, but I do think that you expected it to be bad to begin with. And so for me, that's not a huge disappointment because I just didn't expect much to begin with. And so the drop off.
I put him there with, like, in that regard. I put him, for me, it would be like Masvidal. Like Masvidal isn't disappointing to me because I never bought into that hype myself. I thought that he was always like, a solid fighter who is never going to be good enough to hold a belt.
Then what is your fight disappointment of the year?
Disappointment of the year? This one, it's tough because we've broken them down into the biggest disappointing fight of the year, which is easily Izzy and Romero. It's basically that's part of the fight when Dana decided, like, this guy's done. We're done working with Yoel Romero. He was furious after that fight.
Yeah, he was.
But at the same time, Tony, seriously, like, as a fan of the guy, it's very disappointing and very difficult to watch him fall to where he is. And I mean, we can only hope that he can come back and develop maybe another streak or something. But he's getting old, and he's taken a lifetime worth of damage over just like a couple of 10 15-minute periods.
Yeah,
I think, though, ultimately, and then of course there's O'Malley. O'Malley was a crazy disappointment, that fight. Yeah. But you know what? No, I think that my vote goes to Yoel Adasanya. That was such a weird, strange fight that just, with all, like, everyone was talking about how explosive it was going to be. This is going to be the guy who can maybe, like, take out Adasanya. I mean, Yoel Romero got, like, pushed. He got a leap over to the title shot that he arguably didn't earn because of just how much of a danger everyone thought he was going to be to Adasanya. And he really didn't perform. And, to be fair, I mean, neither did Izzy. I mean, Izzy ate one of those Yoel punches. He said, I want nothing to do with that. And he stayed at a distance and picked him apart with those leg kicks, which was a smart, but let's just say,
disappointing.
If for a person who may or may not have, but may have paid for a pay-per-view, but may not have paid for that pay-per-view either, it would have been highly disappointing to pay for that fight and to walk away with that.
Adam, where's your vote lie?
I am going to say the Diaz brothers. They're some of my favorite fighters, and it always seems that there's way more talk than there is action to back it up. I remember there was a strong presence that like Nick was going to come back last year. Maybe it was last year, maybe it was this year. I honestly can't remember. But and yet again, he didn't. Now there's talk of him supposed to come back in 2021. We'll see if that happens. I'm kind of leaning towards it probably won't. But yeah, it'd have to be them because they always talk, and I totally respect both of them. They are excellent fighters and they have such great technique and such great styles, but they fight so infrequently that they can't back it up.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't put that on my list because I just didn't expect them. So I find it hard to be disappointed when I didn't expect it to happen in the first place. I never put any real hope behind the Diaz brothers fighting. I just I don't even care anymore. I'm just like, okay, if you want to fight, then I'll start to care. As soon as you announce the fight, I'll care. Before then, I'm not even listening. It's just all talk. I'm just kind of over it. I am torn between Tony and Izzy Romero fight as well. I actually would want to say Tony just because Tony Khabib was such a legendary thing that I just needed to see when Tony had that aura, which he doesn't have anymore, as we know. When he had that aura, I would have put it with Tony. My second place would go to Costa and Izzy and Romero. So I guess when you look at the accumulation of points, I guess we would have to give it to Izzy Romero. I keep on saying it, Costa Romero.
I thought we were good with the three of us and considered that we might all pick different fucking ones.
All right, so Adam, I'll let you. Adam, we need a tiebreaker between Costa Romero Izzy Romero. I keep on doing it. Izzy Romero or Tony's drop off. You're going to be the tiebreaker because Noah and I both have it as our top two in different orders.
I think I'm going to go with Izzy Romero.
Yes.
All right. I
win.
Also, by the way, I was just going to say, I expected Romero to pull the trigger a lot more than he did. He's up there in age, still looks like a beast of a man, but you expected him to do a lot more, and Izzy did what he had to do. He just stayed on the outside, picked him away with the leg kicks, and no shame to him. But
and I will also say that's another fight. Another part of the disappointment there is I think that's one of those classic fights where you sell it to all your friends, all your casual friends who are like, hey, look, I want you to see what this skinny guy can do to this Hulk. And then nothing happens, and you're like, "Oh no!" Bro, in fact, I saw a meme.
You gotta see what happens in this fight. It's gonna be crazy. Derek Lewis and Francis Ngannou. It's gonna be nuts.
So I saw a meme that was like, it was like the main event when you're watching alone, and it had like Nick Diaz against what's his name? Oh, what was a crazy Nick Diaz 1-round fight that he had?
Paul Daly.
Nick Diaz against Paul Daly, and it's like the main event when you try to show your casual fans is Izzy Romero. It was like that's what it was. So that's why I guess I definitely support that as being on this list. But now let's turn this around and go after we had a little bit of a disappointment of the year.
We're getting to some serious awards now. Now we're getting to our real top of the line. I think we're at the halfway point here.
We're at the halfway point here.
Everything we've done has been like, we've been doing some fun awards, some fun stuff, but now we're getting to our serious
the meat and potatoes
categories. Exactly.
So our performance of the year. So this is about not necessarily a year's worth of performances, not necessarily anything that happened over the course of a long period of time, just a one fight where one fighter just stood out as just, wow, what a performance. So we have 4 potential nominees here. We have Conor's performance against Cowboy, that 17 or 19 second first round finish. Brilliant. We have Izzy's absolute picking apart domination of Paulo Costa. We have Gaethje's just beating of Tony Ferguson at UFC 249 to end Tony Ferguson's 12-fight unbeaten streak. And finally, we have Infiguetto's 2 wins, but really that second win over Joseph Benavidez, where he knocked him down 2 or 3 times and then he choked him unconscious. Those are our 4 contenders for performance of the year. Who wants to start on this one?
I'll go ahead if you don't mind. So this one, tough to really choose between all of these. And actually, I don't. What? It strikes me as odd that we didn't include Zhang and Jacek in there.
Well, that was the thing is that wasn't an individual person's
I guess,
performance. That was
I
a
guess I can
general
see
fight.
that. I guess so. So if we're talking about a real dominant performance,
Yeah.
So I break it down. For me, the two that I would put on top are the Gaethje Tony and Izzy Costa. And between the two of those, I think that I'd have to go with Izzy Costa. First off, it's hard for me to think too much about Gaethje Tony. Breaks my heart.
Yeah.
But I will say, to Tony's credit, Tony had some serious moments in that fight. I mean,
Tony almost knocked him out in the second round.
He came extreme, like Gaethje said himself. He was like basically out on his feet with that uppercut. Like that was pure, like, as much as it sucks, and you know the narrative now is that Tony's kind of washed. I mean, listen, if you go back, you look at a moment like that, and it's like you could see, like, you know, Tony wasn't all hype. He was there.
Yeah.
But Izzy took someone who might have been the biggest star of 2020, someone who had the potential to be the biggest star of 2020 in the UFC. And he
humiliated
him. He humiliated him. He exposed him in a way that showed just how far ahead of the pack Izzy is. He showed that he is the best, possibly the best striker of all time in the UFC. He demonstrated that, you know, you need, like, what do you need to do to beat him? What do you need to do to get through the holes in his game? And maybe it'll take that, you know, moving up to a much more powerful fighter, like a durable fighter like Jan Blachowicz. But Izzy made Costa his bitch. That
Literally,
was set in stone at the end of the fight. We all saw what happened there. So
yeah,
that's going to Izzy. Fuck it. I don't even care. Forget everything I just said. Izzy fucked Costa in the asshole after that fight. That's the performance of the year.
Adam,
thank you very much.
Okay, so I'm gonna go with Izzy and Costa as well. Probably not with the same explicit tone, but yeah, extremely technical performance. It's what we, the hardcore fans, expected, and it sort of, it honestly exceeded my expectations. Just the way he outclassed him and used his leg kicks, used his reach, and there were some like really good exchanges that just made Izzy look so dominant. And then to finally finish the fight, it was a beautiful performance. So I'd have to go with that.
Yeah, I'm going to echo what you guys said. When I go through these four, I see that the Cowboy was a little bit coming off some losses. And for that reason, I can't give that Conor performance over him that much credit, just because it didn't, to me, seem like he fought a top level performer. And I actually kind of see the same thing with Figueiredo and Benavidez. Benavidez, maybe the first time it was amazing, but because Benavidez was already coming off that knockout loss, he was already dealing with concussion symptoms in between those fights. He wasn't the level of opponent that he should have been fighting. And honestly, you can argue a little bit of the same with Tony, having come off a weight cut just a month previous. Maybe he shouldn't have been fighting either. And so even if you want to just go off of who were they fighting against, I would give it to Izzy. He had the guy who was probably in his best form that he was against. And of course, just the way he dominated, the way he dismantled him, the way he embarrassed him, and the way that you can book that fight 1,000 times. And I don't think anyone actually believes that Costa would win almost any of those fights. And so just because of the discrepancy and the fact that you can see this happening again and again, just because of how dominantly he did it, I agree with you guys. Izzy Costa is our winner. And let's
unanimous decision.
By unanimous decision. All right, let's move on to our next award. So now we looked at an individual performance of the year. Now let's look at a more general award. So we're going to go into card of the year. So we had a bunch of crazy cards this year. This one I'm going to have to do a little bit of a longer kind of introduction for, just because these are full cards we got to talk about. So we have 4 main cards that we are talking about being the card of the year. For the record, this is not just the main card we're talking about. We're talking about the prelims and the main card put together. What was the overall just best night of fights? So our first contestant, let's go in order of occurrence. UFC 249.
Also, hold on. I just want to throw in the stipulation also because someone out there is going to be an asshole about this. It's too goddamn difficult for us to go back and go through all of the individual fight nights that happened.
Obviously.
When they were happening every single weekend. So we are only including numbered cards so only cards that had, like a UFC number 200, whatever.
I not actually don't fully agree with that, just because I think the reason that none of the fight nights, in my opinion, the reason I didn't put any fight nights on here is just because they don't have as big as big fights influentially. I think that that for me, the card of the year is a combination of not just how crazy the fights were and how amazing the performances were, but also how influential they were, how much they mattered towards the divisions, and pay-per-views just generally have bigger names, more influential fights on them. So starting off with UFC 249, this was our May comeback card after the coronavirus took out a month and a half worth of fights. Gaethje against Tony was our, of course, number 1 fight. We had Cejudo defeating Dominic Cruz and then subsequently retiring as our co-main event. We had Ngannou I don't even know what you want to say, what he did to Rosenstruck.
He windmilled him.
Windmilled Rosenstruck. We had Cater with his beautiful knockout over Jeremy Stevens. We had the Pettis Cowboy close decision that Pettis won, but maybe somewhat controversially. Vicente Luque knocking out Nico Price. And of course, Bryce Mitchell's incredible grappling performance against Charles Rosa. UFC 253, we didn't have as crazy of an overall card. However, the top 2 fights with Israel against Costa and our Blachowicz against Reyes were super influential, were the talk of the town for quite a while afterwards. UFC 254, Khabib against Gaethje. Khabib's retirement, his incredible submission over Justin Gaethje's incredible performance, which is also very much hyped up. Co-main event was Robert Whittaker defeating Jared Cannonier in a quite dominant performance, almost knocking him out.
Seriously hyped fight that one was.
Volkov against Harris was a great fight. Phil Farrell Hog Haas, of course, with his 18-second destruction. And Magomed Ankalaev and against Juan or whatever you want to call him, Kutelaba.
Is it ION? Because I've heard that name just pronounced. I think it's just Ian. I've heard ION pronounced as Ian before.
I have, but apparently it's more like Iwan, according to Bisping, who's friends with him. So it might be Iwan. Either way, Kutelaba.
Who are you going to trust more, an analyst like me or Bisping, who's friends with him?
Yeah, well, I mean, but Bisping has an accent. It's probably just the accent. Yeah, but of course that was take like 39. It took like 39 attempts to make that fight happen, and finally Ankalaev knocks him out in the first round with a crazy left hook. That was a great card. And finally, this is maybe a little bit of recency bias, but UFC 256 was insane. Just 2 or 3 weeks ago, Figueiredo against Moreno, potential fight of the year, draw. Tony's lost to Charles Oliveira. We had Mackenzie Dern against Jandiroba. Kevin Holland's coming out party with his crazy knockout against Jacare, as well as Cyril Gane's coming out party with his knockout of JDS. Fiziev had a great knockout over Moicano. We had Gavin Tucker with his awesome performance against Billy Quarantillo. And we had Cub Swanson as well with a great knockout over Pineda. So we have a bunch of great cards to choose from this year. Whoever wants to jump in on this, whoever has a stronger opinion, I guess, who do you guys think wins card of the year in your books?
I'm going to go with UFC 249, especially with the story behind it. First fight coming back after the first impact of Corona. The whole card was super stacked. Every fight delivered. And it was just such a spectacle of an event.
Top to bottom.
Sorry?
From top to bottom.
Yeah. Yeah, top to bottom, every single fight delivered. And it had a lot of value in each of the divisions. I do want to make an honorable mention for actually Cowboy and Conor, just because anytime Conor fights, it's such a huge event. Thousands of people filling up the arena, so much hype behind it. It's just such a crazy experience. So I want to make that an honorable mention, but definitely I'd give the award to 249.
Noah?
Yeah. I think I agree. I think I agree with Adam. I think that 249 was an unbelievably strong card in terms of its the performances and its implications on the sport in general. Honestly, that's the card we're going to look back at most likely as the beginning of the end for Tony Ferguson, sadly. And the really, depending on how things continue in his career, the real moment that Justin Gaethje really demonstrated that he is one of the biggest threats in the division. We already knew he was a massive threat in the division, but beating Tony Ferguson, and ending that legendary run that he was on, it really said something about him, and it really showed the rest of us, just how, if Justin Gaethje is serious and comes in with like a champion mentality, you can see just how far that can take him. It also gave us, that unbelievable highlight of Ngannou, as we said, windmilling Rosenstrike. He really did I don't know if you guys are Simpsons fans, but he really threw I'm just going to start swinging my arms like this. And if you get hit, it's your own fault. He really threw that on us, and it worked so goddamn well. And then also, if that wasn't enough, if I'm not mistaken, was that not the card that birthed wasn't that when Cruz blamed what's his name? Was that Jason Herzog for
Yes.
Alcohol
and cigarettes.
Reeked of cigarettes and booze, and that's I think a couple of months ago, Cruz was an announcer, and Herzog comes on to judge a fight. He's like, uh-oh.
Keith Peterson. Yeah.
Keith Peterson. Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's such a top tier meme of the year right there. That's just as influential for me in that card. God, that was a good one. I think 249. I'm going to give that my card of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I personally have it a bit of a tie between 249 and 256. Maybe it's recency bias, but I thought 256 was just insane. Top to bottom, every single fight delivered. But I guess I maybe I do edge it out to 249 as well, just because not only did it have all those crazy fights, not only was every single fight top to bottom with influential big names and stars, but also just being that comeback card, just being the first card back after 2 months off, the first time sport is really back, all the attention and all the focus that was on it. I think that just brings it up even one more notch on top of where it already was. Plus the Hudo retired. We knew who Khabib was going to fight next. It really, it was a top notch card.
Mm-hmm.
So 249 is our card of the year. Yes.
I think it says something that for the between 256 and 249, the two, Tony Ferguson, no matter even losing, he's the biggest character on all of them. He is like the really what gives these cards a large amount of their significance.
Yeah.
No matter what happens, Tony Ferguson, he's always going to be a legend, a complete legend of the game.
Absolutely. Moving on to a bit of back to more individual awards. I believe the rest of our awards are all individual awards. So this one is one of the biggest awards of the year. This is our Breakout Fighter of the Year. So a little bit of discussion of what this really means. This is a bit of a combination between someone who did not have a big following last year that has a massive following now, as well as someone who maybe hadn't won a ton yet, maybe just was entering the UFC, maybe had a lot of hype behind them, but hadn't quite put it together yet or hadn't quite proved the hype. And in 2020, managed to break out, show the hype, just put together a bunch of huge wins and gain a bigger following. So we have a huge list for this one. We're going to separate it into we have 5, I guess, top contestants, or 6 top contestants, as well as another 5 honorable mentions that we're not going to talk about as much, but we're going to mention a little bit on the side. So our top 6, you got Jan Blachowicz becoming the 205 champion. He beat Corey Anderson with that one-punch knockout, and then he followed it up with a dominant win over Dominic Reyes to become the champion. We have Kevin Holland with 5 wins in 2020, 4 of them being by stoppage, 3 of those stoppage wins being in the first round, ending off with a big win over Jacare Souza to break him into the top 5, top 7 of the division. Huge performances by Kevin Holland. We have, of course, Hamza Chimayab, the star absolutely of Fight Island on the very least, who had 2 huge wins in 10 days on Fight Island, taking a total of 3 strikes, and then that one punch destruction of Gerald Meershart at the UFC Apex. We have Ciryl Gane, who only had 1 fight in 2020. However, that 1 fight did show how he is a heavyweight that moves like a middleweight. It brought a lot of hype behind him, and that win was over Junior Dos Santos to put him as number 7 now in the UFC heavyweight division. And finally, we have Gilbert Durinho Burns starting off the Corona year, I guess, stealing that Woodley fight away from Leon Edwards, defeating Woodley, continuing. I'm sorry, actually, and before he beat Woodley, he knocked out Damian Maia after surviving on the ground with Damian Maia. 2 very, very impressive things. So Gilbert Burns is also in our conversation. I guess I'll just quickly mention right now our honorable mentions. We had Sean O'Malley.
Actually, I'd like to go over them just because I put them down on there, and I'd like to just give them the quick little explanation as to what I was thinking there. So we had a little bit of disagreement before we got started about what exactly constitutes the breakout fighter of the year. So I've listed a couple of people who, despite maybe not seeing as much success, or maybe their success not having as far-reaching implications
in the octagon, at least
in the octagon. Sure, yes. I think that we would be remiss to not mention a few of these names as breakout fighter of the year. So Sean O'Malley, number 1. He came back after
not fighting
for 2 years, and he came back, and really took the MMA world by storm. And just really gave himself some major star power. And along the same lines, you've got Marlon Vera, who everyone was writing off until he finished this hype train of O'Malley, and managed to get a much higher profile. He got that fight with Jose Aldo, which at the time I was saying, and now definitely after the loss, I don't think he should have been given that fight. I think that was a little bit above his pay grade. Or Roey, I can see you disagree with me. Whatever.
You literally said last week. You literally said that you agree he should have been in there, but Aldo was better. But he should have gotten that chance. Is what you said last week.
No, I don't think he should have gotten that chance over some other guys who were higher ranked. If I'm looking back, let's see. We got Paulo Costa, who despite his loss against Israel Adesanya. God, if you want to talk about somebody, he probably only beaten by Hamza Chimayab in terms of someone who got mainstream attention this year and became well known with the casuals. Finally, we've got Joaquin Buckley, who fucking took the world by storm with that absolutely one of the craziest knockouts any of us have ever seen. Period.
And followed it up, by the way, with another knockout a couple of weeks ago.
Exactly. So absolutely phenomenal. And then I put on Michel Pereira because he's had a phenomenal year. He's had excellent fights, and he's really shown himself to be one of the most entertaining people on the UFC roster, who can still string together wins against serious opponents. Those guys aren't in the running for the award, but I felt that it was important to at least mention that. I'm almost also wondering if I'm not going to take any more time, might put Chase Hooper on that list of someone who's a breakout fighter this year, someone who's really gotten his name, much more in lights. However, these fighters have not had the same level of success in the octagon as some of the other guys that we named before. So that said, get on with the actual award.
All right, so Adam, I'm going to let you choose between, again, we have Jan Blachowicz, Kevin Holland, Hamza Chimaev, Ciryl Gane, Charles Oliveira. I forgot, I accidentally skipped over his name, sorry, with 2 huge wins over Kevin Lee and Tony Ferguson, from being a borderline top 15 fighter, having a long-term success, but never really breaking out, and then coming in and now being the number 3 ranked guy and potentially next in line for a title shot. He's also a breakout fighter of the year potential. So bring him on that list. And lastly, Gilbert Durinho Burns, who is the next in line for the 170 challenge.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me just say right off the bat that if Michel Pereira got that donkey kick KO, that it would for sure be him.
Fair.
But in terms of actual contestants, I got to give it to Kevin Holland. 5-0 is not a thing that happens super frequently in the UFC.
Happened once
in
before,
a year,
I think, or twice before.
Yeah, once or twice
That's it.
before in the calendar year. So it's extremely impressive. And he's also just built such a big name for himself. He kind of seems like he's got that it factor that Dana always talks about. And he ended the year in a fantastic note, knocking out Jacare. So I'd give it to him.
Yeah, honestly, I agree. I give it to Holland as well. Jan is close up there for me, just because, yes, he only had 2 wins, but when you look at just how far he's come, when you looked at him a year ago, you did not look at him as a guy who will ever be champion, and now he is. And those 2 guys that he beat, both of them, I expected to destroy him. I thought Corey Anderson was going to take him down, eat him alive. In fact, the first time he fought Corey Anderson, he lost. He lost unanimous decision. He lost all 3 rounds, one of them being a 10-8 round, and then to come out and knock him out in the first round, that's incredible to me. So I really have him as my runner-up. Hamza, I would like to be up there, but only having fought 3 times and none of those 3 fighters being ranked is the only reason I put him a little lower. If he had fought Leon Edwards and beaten Leon Edwards last weekend, he would have been my fighter of the year. However, because he didn't, I have to give it to breakout fighter of the year, not fighter of the year, breakout fighter of the year. I have to give it to Kevin Holland. 5-0, 3 first round knockouts, a 3rd round knockout over Buckley, by the way. He knocked out Buckley clean in the 3rd round, who's another guy on this list. So that already is also pushing him over the edge for me.
The award goes to Holland because however, I am going to put my number 1 pick, I'm gonna say Hamza, because I know that, as time has passed by, his accomplishments this year don't seem as impressive in retrospect. He beat guys that weren't, arguably the toughest challenges for him. However, if you want to talk about who's had as a breakout fighter, he's not my fighter of the year, but if you want to talk breakout fighters, if you want to talk somebody who was a nobody prior to this year, who is now probably the biggest star the UFC has in their roster.
Outside the top 15.
Outside.
Yeah.
But
biggest
even
unranked fighter,
he's a bigger star than most guys in top 15 in any division.
True.
Everybody knows who this man is. I'm just gonna, if you indulge me for one moment, I'm just gonna hop onto his Instagram and see how many followers this Hamza Chimayab has.
He gained 1 million followers in a matter of days. It was crazy.
He has 1.1 million followers,
and he had 50,000 last year.
To compare, 50,000 last year. That's crazy. Kamaru Usman right now has 1.5 million followers. The champion has only a couple 100,000 more than this guy who has fought 3 times in the UFC.
And by the way, he's only fought once in Kamaru at 170.
Yeah,
the 2 other fights were 185. This is crazy.
It's unbelievable, the story that we've seen with Hamza, and hopefully we can see continued success for him in the new year. It's a shame that he didn't get that fight with Edwards. It'll
happen in 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's happening. So very excited for that. But Hamza, not my fighter of the year, because the wins just aren't impressive. It's not over impressive enough opponents. But that man broke out this year in a major way.
Yeah, I just want to just, before we move on, just mention very briefly what's the most amazing thing to me. When you think Damian Maia, can you think of anyone who you're like, oh no, they should not fight Damian Maia, that's not fair to Damian Maia, that's too hard for him? You don't think Damian Maia is top of the division. He's fought Colby Covington, he's fought Kamaru Usman, he's fought RDA, right? He's fought everybody. He fought Ben Askren. He bought Jorge Masvidal. Everyone in the top 5 he's fought, and then they were going to put him against Hamza, and they said, "Oh, that's not fair to Damian. We can't do that to him. He's going to get eaten." That is blowing my mind. That a guy of that stature, that a guy that is only now ranked, I think he's ranked 15. I mean, maybe I was wrong there. I think he's ranked 15 now. But regardless, to say he's too good for Damian when he's 10 spots below him is crazy.
You got to get Hamza in there with Butterbean.
Yeah.
That'll be a fight.
All right, we got 4 more awards to give out. These are the big 4. So we're going to start off with submission of the year. There is not too much to explain here. What was the best submission of the year? So we have, 6 things that we bring in here. So we have, of course, Khabib's beautiful triangle choke over Justin Gaethje. Just that whole transition where he took him down, mounted him, triangle choked him. It was just like a 15-second, just brilliant transition to transition to transition. And he almost, by the way, beat him, almost submitted him in the first round as well, but the time ran out.
Mm-hmm.
Ariana Lipski had a really gross looking knee bar over, I forget what her name was, but that was, I honestly can't even watch that. Knee bars make me queasy just because I think about your knee tearing and it's just, it's horrible.
That's a career ender.
Yeah, honestly. Jimmy Flick just last week had an awesome head kick into flying triangle submission over Cody Durden. That was insane.
Mm-hmm.
Figueiredo with his crazy guillotine over Perez, where he just out of nowhere, Perez tried to get on top and he just wrapped that arm over and it was done. Mm-hmm. That was a beautiful finish. Figueiredo as well had an awesome rear naked choke over Joseph Benavidez. And then the last one, if we want to throw it in there, Charles Oliveira didn't submit Tony Ferguson, but he put him in quite the submission hold with that crazy armbar. Just Tony's too crazy to tap. So you can decide if you want to count that or not, but I think it does definitely deserve an honorable mention.
But who do you guys give? We forgot to seems like we forgot to add in as well the Aljo Sterling and
Aljamain Sterling
over Cody Sandhagen.
Yeah, that was a Corey Sandhagen.
Man moving
yeah.
Everyone
says I know, I do it too.
Climbed him like a spider, if I'm recalling correctly.
And put him out.
Yeah,
that was crazy.
That might be it for me, actually.
So then, is that your vote, Noah?
I wanted to say Figgy Benavidez because the aftermath of that, the Benavidez waking up screaming, is an image to behold, something that I may never forget, just because of how absolutely disturbing that was. That Jimmy Flick submission as well was extremely impressive. One of the best submissions of the year, easily. Highly technical, very just seamless in how he managed that. However, that Aljo, the way that he was just a fucking spider, just clung to Sandhagen and beat this guy who is proved himself to be so tough and such a strong competitor. It really just shows just how impressive Aljo is. So I think that Aljo's rear naked choke is going to be my submission of the year.
Interesting, because I actually gave it to Khabib personally. I put it over Gaethje.
You can't go wrong. You can't go wrong.
You can't. I mean, first of all, we look at just the level of competition. Justin Gaethje, we were all saying, maybe Justin Gaethje can stop him on the ground. Not even close. You look, so there's level of competition. You have the stakes, of course. You know about all the pressure that's on Khabib, insane amounts of pressure. But then just the submission itself, just the beautiful transition from position to position. It just showed a mastery of every little part along the way. There wasn't a single part where he wasn't in complete control. His technique was just, you cannot do it any more perfectly than that. And I don't think that there's a guy in the UFC who has the level of ground game on every little section that Khabib has. I don't think anyone else in the UFC, including Tony Ferguson, could have gone from position to position to position that smoothly, that seamlessly like Khabib did. I think that's my submission of the year. However, I do give Jimmy Flick is actually my runner-up just because of how smooth that transition was. The reason I don't count Figueiredo over Benavidez as highly is just because Benavidez was already hurt. And so it gives you a bit of an advantage, and it was against a guy who is not as high level. So Benavidez is very high level, but the guy is not at a high level anymore when he's kind of hurt. He's not fully there, and so that's why I have to give it to the guy who beat someone who's fully conscious in Justin Gaethje. So I give it to Khabib. Adam, you're the tiebreaker.
I'm going Khabib as well. It was just a incredible performance, incredible event, and for the same reasons that you pointed out, just beautiful transition to transition. And yeah, it was flawless.
And by the way, just one thing to mention about that, I mean, you can talk about whether or not you believe it. I believe it just because it's Khabib. Khabib was talking about how we all saw he could have armbarred him. He had so many different positions. He had 18 different submissions he could have gone to. And he mentioned, I didn't go to armbar because I know that Justin won't tap. and I don't want to hurt him in front of his parents. And so instead, I just put him to sleep. To have that level of control to decide which submission you're going to go to, and you know that no matter what you decide to do, you're going to get it, is just so crazy to me that, I have to give it to Khabib.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with this one.
Well, speaking of putting people to sleep, our next one is knockout of the year. So we have a pretty extensive list here as well. Of course, the highlight reel, the biggest thing that everyone has seen a million times over is Joaquin Buckley's insane jumping back kick knockout over Infiguetto just about 2 or 3 months ago. That was craziness. Chaos Williams, or Calvin Williams, whatever you want to call him, crazy one-punch knockout over Abdulrazak Al-Hassan, where putting out Al-Hassan, who is himself a knockout artist, out for 3 or 4 minutes. Francis Ngannou, as we mentioned, murdering Rosenstruck at UFC 249 with those windmill punches, and that was bad. Sean O'Malley, his one-punch knockout over Eddie Wineland, where he had that double fake where he went fake right hand, fake jab, uppercut. Just insanity.
Also led to one of the funnier videos of the year.
Led to one of, and well, that's
aftermath.
And in the aftermath, so let's actually tie this together. He compared that to the other knockout of the night, which was Cody Garbrandt knocking out Rafael Assunção. And so, yes, as you're mentioning, Noah, we had O'Malley comparing his Wineland knockout to the Garbrandt. He did something like, just do this.
People don't like O'Malley, but I don't think they realize that he's
a troll.
He's a troll, and he's got a phenomenal sense. His dry sense of humor is absolutely hilarious.
So let me just finish off. We have 2 more knockouts to talk about. We have Hamza Chimayab's one-punch knockout over Gerald and Meershart. And this is the guy who we were all talking about is the best grappler ever. Oh my God, he might be the next Khabib. And then his stand-up somehow is better than his ground game. Craziness. And if we want to throw in a little bit of an honorable mention, we can throw a Jake Paul and Nate Robinson knockout. Was kind of fun as well. Maybe not quite to the same high level as some of the other ones, but
what are you talking about? Jake Paul is going to be the next champion. He's going to beat Mayweather.
Logan's going to lose to Mayweather. Jake Paul will come back and avenge his brother. We'll see this.
How about we get Jake Paul versus what's that? Jake Paul versus Charlie Zelenoff.
Oh God.
That'll be the next fight.
So knockout of the year. Who wants to start on that one?
Bro, you want to take it away with this one, maybe?
I mean, I think you at the end of the day, I can't not give it to Buckley. I think I wouldn't be surprised if you guys agree with me. Just Buckley was obviously the knockout of the year. Do you guys agree? Just very quickly, yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay, so
it's like the best knockout I've ever seen in my life.
Adam, if you have some other things to talk about, just say no, and then we can do it. But if it's a yes, just is it a yes?
Yeah, it's a yes.
All right, so then our conversation should really be about who's the second best knockout of the year, because I think we all agree Buckley's knockout of the year. The interesting conversation I think is in the number 2. I actually give it to Hamza, just because. Yeah, Francis was amazing. It was brutal, but it was not technical. And he got hit a couple times on the way in. Chaos was awesome, but it was just kind of a one-punch counter, very similar to the Jan Blachowicz one. And O'Malley was O'Malley is actually my 3rd place. Garbrandt was not as technical as O'Malley, but I just think the Hamza knockout was so shocking. It was such a perfectly placed shot, so perfectly timed, and it was a full weight class above, right? He's a 170er knocking out a 185er. So for all of those reasons, I give my 2nd place knockout of the year to Hamza Chimayab over Gerald Meershart.
No, do you want to?
Yeah, sure. So for 2nd place, as much as Adam, I'll let you say the line that you wrote down under. I'll let you take the credit for that line yourself under Francis. So the Francis Ngannou knockout was pretty fucking phenomenal. Absolutely insane. I think Adam has something to say about the power with that one. But I'm sorry, I gotta apologize to Sean O'Malley, but that Garbrandt knockout was something else for me. The way that he popped up like it was a mole in like a whack-a-mole game. The way that he came from it, like he ducked down, dodged the shot, and then all the power from your punches, it starts in your feet. And the way that he just was able to pop up and throw that insane hook that would have, that man,
would have put out a
Garbrandt's
horse.
He's not a big guy. Those guys are all small guys.
That shot would have put out a horse, dude.
Yes.
No. In fact, that shot would have put out a Francis Ngannou.
Yeah. That shot.
Okay, no, it wouldn't. No, you can't put up Francis Ngannou, but still.
That shot hits clean on anyone, and they're gonna be dazed and confused for a long time afterwards. So, and just how fast it happened, it was just a perfect. Garbrandt is an emotional fighter. He gets pissed, and then he starts throwing, and it seems like he found a way to make that work to his advantage this time, unlike the Munoz fight
or the Dillashaw fight.
Or the Dillashaw fight, yeah. He found a way to use his emotion, and he hit that shot, and it was an unbelievable knockout for me. So that's my second place.
Mm-hmm. For my second place, I'd give Francis the win with that, because anytime you hit somebody with the same amount of force as a Ford Escort, I think that deserves KO of the year. Sure, there was no form, there was no technicality behind it. It was just him sort of swinging his arms around. But the fact that he can do that and it works is pretty incredible to me. And the fact that he could potentially walk into a fight with Stipe and just sort of stand like this and spin in a circle like 1,000 times until he hits him.
Beyblade him to death.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Beyblade. Yeah,
all of these knockouts were just like, damn, what a year for finishes.
But yeah, of course, I guess we do have to say what exactly happened. Joaquin Buckley. The other thing about the Joaquin Buckley knockout, by the way, not only was it incredibly athletic, it was impressive. The impact of what it did to Impa with him just falling like a statue, it was amazing. But the other things that Impa Kasanganay was a hyped prospect. People were watching that fight not for Buckley, they were watching it for Impa, and for Buckley to take all that momentum and to turn it into his, and then to have that crazy knockout, and then to not only take all the momentum but build on it was, I think, was also just adds to the impressiveness of the knockout. Mm-hmm. So that's another reason that we have it as knockout of the year.
And just, everyone, it did, because it happened so recently, people are, I think, apprehensive to give it this, but 3-4 years from now, that's going to be highlight top knockout of all time.
I still like the spinning knockout by Edson Barboza over Terry Edom. I still think that is higher up than this one, but yeah, it's up there. It's up there. Or even Ngannou against Overeem, that's up there as well.
It's forever. It's etched into the UFC.
Yeah. In fact, let's put it this way: do you guys know the Bubba O'Reilly intro that the UFC has for every pay-per-view?
Yeah.
It should be added onto that, and that's all we need to say.
Mm-hmm.
If it should be added onto that, then it's one of those legendary moments.
Exactly.
All right. Well, boys, we are rounding third. We have just a couple more awards to give out. These are the big two. So we're going to start off with Fight of the Year. And we will finish off with Fighter of the Year. So Fight of the Year. We have really a couple very clear contestants for this. We have 5 main contestants. So we have Dustin Poirier against Dan Hooker in the UFC Apex. That was insanity. We had Joanna Jędrzejczyk against Zhang Wei Li, UFC 246 or something. It was the Izzy Romero card. We had Figueiredo against Moreno, which was the last pay-per-view of the year. That headliner, that draw was insanity. Shane Burgos against Dan Ige. And finally, Gaethje and Tony. Those are our 5 contestants for Fight of the Year. Who wants to start off on this one?
This is a tough one.
It is a tough one.
Just kidding. Not fucking tough at all. Joanna Whaley was the best fucking fight of the year. That thing was insane. Did you see how big that woman's head blew up like a hot air balloon? Oh my God. It was like that was the number one for me. That from like the moment that fight ended, that it was cemented. It doesn't even feel like it happened this year.
For argument's sake, what's your number 2? I'm just curious. I'm curious what your number 2 is.
For argument's sake, my number 2,
Oh, but you didn't see Poirier Hooker. Ooh,
Yeah,
that makes it
unfortunately,
tough.
my big sin this year is that I missed Poirier Hooker, so I cannot
Actually,
speak on that
let me
fight
say
that
something
everybody loved
quickly.
so much.
I take back my vote earlier. Disappointment of the year: Noah Solomon not watching not watching Dan Hooker against Dustin Poirier.
Believe me, that's my disappointment of the year as well. God, I'm thinking second place. If we're just looking at this list, it's probably got to be Gaethje Tony, just because that war was unbelievable. I can't recall actually though, because this might sway my answer. Was Holloway? Did Holloway fight Volkanovski this year? Was that this year? I forget.
I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the fight.
Holloway
First fight
Volkanovski too. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay, so I think that's actually for me. I think that's my number 2 over Gaethje Tony, just because of the the back and forth nature of that. There were more points where it seemed like the contender was going to win that fight, and it was a very close decision. It was
Absolutely.
you could very easily, as I have argued that Holloway won that fight. And if I'm not mistaken,
both sides, for sure.
Yeah, you could easily argue both sides. It was not a robbery, no matter what, but it was,
agree.
It was very close. And I think if I'm not mistaken, was that the birth of the 49 times meme? Was that the birth of that?
That is the 49 times meme. That's
the
what
birth
it is.
Of Luke Thomas's world famous 49 times. Watch that fight. Analyze the shit out of it. That one of the best memes of the year as well. So I think my number 2 is that Holloway Volkanovski 2. I can only hope that we can see them meet up sometime in the near future.
All right, Adam, where are your 49 votes going towards?
Perhaps it's a little bit of recency bias, but I would say Figgy Moreno for me. That it was just such a back and forth war. Everything that was included in it, the eye pokes, the groin strike, that just took so much out of Moreno, and he kept coming back and won the round. And to me, that was just fight of the year. And great way to end the year.
And what's your second place? Joanna?
Second place, I'd have to go Joanna and Weili. So, such a spectacle for performance.
So I'm going to agree with you, Adam. I'm just going to swap it. I put Joanna and Weili above Figgy Moreno, and the reason I do so is I think the first 4 rounds were dead even between them. It's just that with Figgy and Moreno, that 5th round really dropped off in terms of their activity. Figueiredo took over, and Moreno just didn't have enough left to fight back, which is why Figueiredo was able to win that last round and earn that draw. So for that reason, I do put Joanna and Weili over it, because they went 5 straight rounds and did not take their foot off the gas until the last bell rang, till the horn rang to end the 5th. They were swinging wildly. So for that reason, I have to give it to Joanna and Weili. And of course, when you look at the 2 people and the aftermath of it and what they looked like afterwards, that also has to add on to it. But what I will mention as well with the Figgy Moreno is you do have to give Figueiredo extra credit for the situation he was in, cutting weight twice in 3 weeks, being in a hospital the night before, with stomach problems. I mean, very clearly overcoming quite a bit of adversity to be able to fight. And it was a draw, and we all are intrigued as hell for that rematch. And the flyweight division is back. And so, that's easily my number 2, but I have to edge it out to Joanna and Weili. And the other thing to mention lastly, Joanna Weili is potentially the greatest women's fight of all time. And Moreno Figueiredo is probably the best flyweight fight of all time, maybe up there with Benavidez against DJ, or Cejudo and DJ. But I just find it difficult. And this is, full disclosure, this is something that Luke Thomas has said. So I'm kind of taking this from him. But I agree with him when he says, I find it difficult to say that the best flyweight fight of all time was a better fight than the best women's fight, period, of all time. So I got to give it to the women.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Like all the previous, like all the last couple of awards, with this one, you can't go wrong. These fights were all absolutely sensational.
Okay, so now we have one more, our biggest award to give, the SmeshCast Fighter of the Year 2020 award. We have 4 main contestants here. We have Deiveson Figueiredo, as we just mentioned, He had 3 straight first-round finishes, all 3 of them in title fights. 2 of them against Benavidez. Maybe the first wasn't technically a title fight. It was kind of an in-betweener because he missed weight. Third one over Perez. And then that fight of the year potential, or at least runner-up against Moreno that ended in a draw. We have Kevin Holland, 5-0, beating 3 first-round knockouts, a third-round knockout over Joaquin Buckley, and finishes it off with a win over Jacare Souza to break into the top 5. And we have Israel Adesanya, who only had 2 fights. They were both title fights. One disappointing against Yoel Romero, and one extremely impressive win over Paulo Costa. And finally, we have that big breakout star from Fight Island. We have Hamza Chimayab, who is, of course, massive now. So who do you boys give your Fighter of the Year award to?
You know, I really sit down and think about this one a lot. I really had to, weigh all of my options, think about all of the different variables. And, when it gets down to it, I really don't think that I can seriously walk away from this without saying that the fighter that you're not just mine. I really think I would describe this, I think you'd be very off base to not agree that our fighter of the year, the man himself, Artem Lobov.
The GOAT.
All right.
Not Jake Paul. Jake Paul's undefeated in 2020.
Jake Paul is
Artem Lobov is undefeated in life.
That's true.
Yes.
Well, Chael Sonnen though. Chael Sonnen is undefeated in ever. He never lost a round.
Chael Sonnen goes beyond Fighter of the Year. That's Man of the Year. That guy
man
gets
of the man of the world.
That guy gets like key to the city of every city on the planet. Okay, more seriously, this is a tough list. I want to say, just looking at the pure accomplishments, that it would be Holland for me, based on just pure accomplishments. But it's hard for me to argue against Israel Adesanya as Fighter of the Year. He showed everyone exactly why he is the dominant champ he is. He is about to undertake probably the most difficult challenge of his career.
MMA career for sure.
Yes. If he
kickboxing.
Sure. That's a whole other can of worms. But if he whole other can of asparagus rather. If he manages to overcome that challenge and take the light heavyweight belt, God, what a story he's got there. God, this one's tough. I don't know who I'd go with. My gut says Izzy, but my brain says Holland. If you just look at that 5-0 year and just like the way that he's getting these finishes and the fact that he just looks so goddamn pleased with himself. He's so happy to just hurt people. It's really something else. I think I'm going to have to settle on Holland for this one. I think that his accomplishments beat out Hamza. And his accomplishments this year, I think, beat out everyone other than maybe Figueiredo. And that's just by virtue of like Figueiredo defending his belt. But Holland seems like he could be, in the next year, he could be right there, capturing the belt and having multiple defenses if he continues to improve. So I think that this year I'm going to give our deep cut Fighter of the Year, because you know what? Everyone out there is going to be giving Fighter of the Year to their Izzy Adesanya and to Figueiredo. I think I'm going with the deep cut choice of Kevin Holland.
Wow. I actually wouldn't even, to be honest, I don't think Izzy is in my conversation. To me, it's just between Figueiredo and Holland. And the reason why is Izzy only had 2 fights. And the Costa was insane, but the Romero one was disappointing. Mm-hmm. He only had 2 fights and one was And the other one, to be honest, as we mentioned, we kind of expected him to do exactly what he did. Maybe not to the degree he did, to the extent of domination, but we expected him to dominate. For me, it's got to be Figueiredo over Holland. The reason why is because, Holland had 5 wins, Figueiredo's 3. But Figueiredo's wins were over much tougher opponents. We're talking about David Benavidez. He beat twice. One of the toughest guys around. We talk about Perez, number 1 contender, and we talk about Moreno, another number 1 contender who if it wasn't for that point loss, that point deduction, he would have beaten. And by the way, somehow one of the judges gave Moreno that 5th round, which makes 0 sense to me. And that would have given Figueiredo the fight if he'd given Figueiredo that 5th round. So for me, Figueiredo should have been 4-0. All 4 would have been title fight wins. And 3 of those being first round finishes. I gotta give it to Figueiredo. Even though Kevin Holland was extremely impressive and 5 wins is just insane. It doesn't happen ever in the UFC. It's only happened once or twice before. They weren't against the same level of competition, and I got to weigh that slightly in Figueiredo's favor for that reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think both Holland and Figueiredo are deserving. That being said, I think Figueiredo was slightly more impressive just because of the level of competition. 4 title fights in 1 year. I mean, I guess you can't really count the first one as being for title contention, but he's just such a scary dude. And he has a great story. Sushi chef and hairdresser, and now coming into fighting. And yeah, he put on, I think, the best performances of the year for sure.
All right, so 2020 SmeshCast Fight of the Year is Deiveson Figueiredo. Amazing. All right, well, boys, that will wrap up our show. As we mentioned, this is our last show of 2020, not our last show period, as Noah's been pretending. We will be back next week. However, we do want to say thank you to all the new fans. This has been a really fun last 3 or 4 months. We started this on August 2nd, and we have 75 subscribers as of December 27th. And it's just been a fun ride. So thank you guys for joining us along this ride. And thank Adam, thank you, Noah, for joining me and doing this with me.
Yeah, this has been a great way to really get through a tough year. So, yeah, thank you to everyone who's taken the time to listen to our dumb shit, listen to us squabble and argue back and forth about meaningless garbage for your and our own entertainment. So, yeah, very happy, and I'm very, very much looking forward to the new year when we can find it, and maybe we'll finally be able to get Dana White. Actually lock him down, get him on our podcast, and we can finally grill him like he deserves to get grilled.
And speaking of next year, we do have a show next week. That show will be our preview show for 2021. So we will have all sorts of things to talk about: who we expect to be champions in 2021, who we expect to be fighter of the year or breakout fighter of the year, or any of these star-studded performances. Who we expect to really what do we see happening in 2021 in the world of MMA? This is going to be a very fun show next week, so please join us. We will be back same time, same place. Until then, for Adam, for Noah, thank you for a great 2020. We'll see you in 2021.